We've now wrapped up most of the Ethereum side of our application. We're still going to come back and make one or two quick changes to our contract, but in general, I think that the campaign is at a pretty good spot right now. We're now going to pivot a little bit and start discussing the web application that we're going to build so that people can actually create campaigns and donate to them from a web browser. Before we start that, however, I want to give you a quick disclaimer here. I know that if you're here in this course, you came to learn specifically about Ethereum. In the application we're about to start working on, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about React and a lot of associated React libraries. So you might be thinking, Steven, I came here to learn about Ethereum. I don't want to learn about React at all. Why are we spending so much time on React? Well, remember what we said much earlier when we were working on the lottery application. At the end of the day, Ethereum is not just a standalone technology that operates without anything else. In reality, we use Ethereum along with many other libraries. And we have to use these other libraries so that users have a UI to actually interact with. So even though you're here to learn about Ethereum, I know it might be frustrating to spend time learning about React at the same time, but really we have to know about how to use Ethereum with these Vue libraries, because otherwise we just can't build an actual application. All right, so that's my quick disclaimer. Hopefully the React stuff is not that painful for you. Okay, so with that in mind, let's take a look at some mockups that are going to show you exactly what we're going to try to build. So at the end of the day, we want to make more or less a Kickstarter clone, something that allows people to browse open campaigns, contribute to them, create campaigns, create requests, everything that we put together inside of our contract. Essentially, every aspect of our contract needs to have some visible feature in the application that we're going to build. I've got on the screen right here the landing page for the application we're going to make. Now, when we actually make this thing, it's going to end up looking quite nice. And I think you're going to enjoy the styling that we end up with quite a bit, like the actual CSS. But for the mockups, I'm going to keep it just kind of like diagram in nature. So at the very top, we're going to have a header. We're going to call this application CrowdCoin. I know that we named the project folder that we're working from right now Kickstart, but that's kind of a boring name. Let's use CrowdCoin. I think that's just a little bit more fun. So at the very top, we'll have the name of our application. We'll have a link that will take the user to a list of all the different campaigns that have been created, and a button that the user can click to create a new campaign as well. This is the landing screen that a user will land at when they first come to our application. When they first come to our application, we'll show them a list of all of our open campaigns. So going down the page right here will be a list of all the campaigns that have ever been created. A user can then click on one of these campaigns to view some details about it. And on the right-hand side, if a user wants to create a new campaign, they can click on the Create Campaign button. So notice that we have the ability to create a campaign twice on here, both this button and the plus up in the header as well. I know it's a little bit duplicate, but whatever. Just make sure that it's really easy for people to create a campaign. So there's still a couple of other pages that we need to look at, about 4 or 5 in total. Once a user decides to create a campaign, we'll take them to a simple screen that shows a form. There's really not a lot of information that we need from a user when they try to create a campaign. Really, we just need the minimum contribution amount. So the user will enter that into a text input, and then they should click on the Create button. When they click on the Create button, as you and I very well know by this point in time, this will run the Create Campaign function on our Campaign Factory contract. So the user clicks this, and then they wait around for 15 or 30 seconds or so for the campaign to actually be created. Now that definitely brings up the topic of how we're going to handle these big pauses as we wait for transactions to be processed. So as we are building this application, we're going to start to investigate some different patterns to make sure that a user is very much aware that, hey, when you click this button, you have to wait for 15 seconds. Like, we want to make sure it's really clear to the user, hey, we're doing something here, just hold on, we're processing the transaction. After a user creates a campaign, we should then make sure that they have the ability to look at some details about the campaign. So this is going to be a page right here that shows details about a very particular campaign that has been created. On the left-hand side, I want to show some statistics about the campaign. So maybe its balance, the amount of money that has to be contributed to be considered a approver, the number of requests that have been created, and the number of people who have already contributed to the campaign. On the right-hand side, we'll show a little form that allows a visitor to contribute to the campaign. So they'll enter some money and click on the contribute button. And then at the very bottom left-hand side, we'll also show a little link that someone can click on to be taken to another screen where they can look at all the pending requests that are tied to this campaign. So that screen is going to look a little bit like this. So this is going to list all of the pending requests for one particular campaign. We're going to put together a little table that shows the ID of a request, its description, the amount of money that we're trying to transfer, the recipient, the approval count, and notice that the approval count is going to have both the number of positive votes on this request out of the total number that are tied to our contract. So in order for this request right here to be approved, it's probably going to need at least 151 out of 300 votes for it to be finalized. And then on the right-hand side, the last two columns here, will show two buttons that can allow any contributor to either approve, and you know what, I marked this as reject. We don't have reject, that's my mistake. This should say finalize. Yeah, so we can either approve or finalize a request. And of course, we'll probably want to do some amount of validation when we show these buttons. Like something to say, hey, if you're going to click this, maybe we only want you to be able to finalize a request if you are the manager and there are an appropriate number of approvals. All right, now the very last thing is the add request button right here at the top right. So if a user clicks on this, we'll take them to a form where they can attempt to create a brand new request. So they should be able to enter a description, the amount of money that they want to transfer, and then the recipient. And as we've discussed many times, this is a form that should probably only be able to be submitted by the manager of the campaign. Because remember, only the manager can create spending requests. All right, so that's pretty much it. That is all the UI that we're going to build. Now, the reason I put that disclaimer at the start of this video saying, hey, I know you're here to learn about Ethereum, not React. Well, you know, we've got like 5 pages that are somewhat complex in nature. And so we're going to be spending a lot of time putting together this application. And so you probably will think at some point, Steven, I am so tired of this React stuff. But honestly, I can't tell you how excited I am about this application because this really is so cutting edge in the world of Ethereum. Like what you're going to learn right now, building this application is so incredibly cutting edge. This stuff just does not exist right now. There's not a lot of applications that are so complex that work with Ethereum. So I know, hey, the React stuff might be painful, but you have no idea how valuable the skills are that you're going to pick up as you're building this app. I really think that at the end of this course or the end of this application, you're going to be really happy with how this project turns out. Really. All right. Now, just one last thing I want to very quickly mention. As we've seen, there are like 4 or 5 different pages here. And so we need the ability to somehow navigate between all these different pages. And more importantly, perhaps, we need to somehow figure out what URL a user is going to visit to show each of these pages. So I put together a little table of some of the possible routes that I think that a user should be able to visit inside of our application. So in other words, if a user comes to our app, and let's say we register our app at crowdcoin.com. So if they navigate to crowdcoin.com, that would correspond to a path of /, as in something like crowdcoin.com/, right? That's our root web page, the root page, the first page a user sees when they visit our application. So whenever a user goes there, we should probably show them a list of campaigns, right? That's going to be our home page. We're going to show them all the campaigns that have been created. Then I'm going to suggest that whenever a user goes to the URL campaigns/new, so basically crowdcoin.com/campaign/new, we should show them the form to create a campaign. Now here's where things get a little bit interesting. When a user goes to campaigns/some address, we're going to assume that they want to get some details about the campaign at that address, like the campaign that is at address 0x8147 And of course, there's a lot more characters in an address than just that. So in other words, if a user goes to campaign/0x8147AB, whatever, yada, yada, we should attempt to load up this campaign and show details about it to the user. And then I think you get the pattern here. If a user goes to campaigns address/requests, we want to show the table of requests. And if they go to blah, 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 request/new, we should show the form where the user can create a new request for that particular campaign. So I just want to make sure it's really clear. These are all very separate pages that a user is going to be looking at and navigating between inside of our application. And the URL is going to be very tightly coupled to what content we want to show to the user on the screen. All right, so that's pretty much it as far as mockups go. Now, we do have to talk a little bit about the tech stack that we're going to use for building this application, because it's going to be a little bit different than what we had done back on the lottery application. So quick pause, and we'll talk about our tech stack in the next video.